John Smith seemed like a nice guy to many people who knew him, but underneath that friendly exterior, John was hiding some very dark secrets. The story begins back in 1970 when John Smith married his first wife, Janice Hartman. At 19 years old, they eloped and ran off to Detroit to start their life together. A few years later, they moved back to rural Wayne County, Ohio. In Ohio, Janice worked as a go-go dancer and also supposedly worked as a police informant, giving information about drug-related crimes. By 1974, after 4 years of marriage, Janice and John got divorced. Just 3 days after the divorce was finalized, Janice suddenly disappeared. John told police different stories about what happened to Janice. To some, he had said she had gone to Florida. To others, he claimed that she had entered a witness protection program because she was about to turn some people in for drug crimes. But Janice's family never heard from her again, which was very strange because she had been so close with them. Around the time Janice went missing, John's brother Michael noticed something odd. He found John at their grandfather's gas station, building a strangely shaped plywood box. When Michael asked about it, John said it was for Janice's belongings. The box was nailed shut and left in the gas station garage for 5 years. In 1979, when their grandfather was cleaning out the garage, he asked Michael to get rid of the box. Michael took it home and pried it open. To his horror, inside, he discovered Janice's mutilated body. Her legs had been cut off to make her fit inside the narrow box. Michael wanted to call the police, but his grandfather punched him in the face for even suggesting they turn in a family member. Instead, Michael called John, who came and took the box away. A year later, in 1980, road workers in rural Indiana made a gruesome discovery. They found a 4.5-foot long handmade plywood box lying in the ditch beside a remote stretch of highway. Inside were the decomposing remains of a woman whose legs had been cut off. The coroner examined the body and determined the woman's legs had likely been removed with an electric saw. But beyond some basic physical descriptions, they couldn't identify who she was or who had killed her. The woman became known as the Lady in the Box, and her case went unsolved for decades. Meanwhile, John Smith moved on with his life. In 1990, he met a woman named Betty Fran Gladden in Florida. After dating for just 2 months, they got married in May 1990 in a beach ceremony. Fran's family thought John seemed like a nice man at first, but there were some red flags. In February 1991, less than a year after they married, John had divorce papers drawn up. He changed his mind though, and he and Fran reconciled. That spring, John lost his job in Florida and took a new position in New Jersey. He and Fran moved there together. After the move, John started making regular weekend trips to Connecticut. He told Fran he owned a house there that he was letting his sister live in, but Fran never saw this house or met John's supposed sister. On October 4th, 1991, Fran called her daughter around 8:30 in the morning from their home in New Jersey. She didn't mention any problems or say she was planning to go anywhere. This was the last time anyone in her family ever heard from her. When Fran's family couldn't reach her, they contacted John. He told them he thought Fran had gone on an unplanned trip, but this didn't make any sense to her family. Fran was recovering from a broken hip at the time, which would have made traveling difficult. She was very close to her family, and it was completely out of character for her to just disappear without telling anyone. Fran's sister Sherry and her daughter Dee Dee became very suspicious of John. They started investigating on their own, digging into John's background. What they uncovered was shocking. They learned that John had been married before Fran, something he had never mentioned. His first wife was Janice Hartman, who had gone missing back in 1974. The similarities between Janice and Fran's disappearances were striking. In both cases, John had reported his wife missing. Both women had vanished without a trace. Both were very close to their families, but never contacted them again after disappearing. And both had left behind all their personal belongings like clothes and makeup. Sherry and Dee Dee took this information to the police. Investigators in New Jersey reached out to the Wayne County Sheriff's Office in Ohio to learn more about the Janice Hartman case. Suddenly, a cold case from 1974 and a fresh missing persons case from 1991 were linked by one man, John Smith. As the investigation heated up, John Smith seemed to sense the walls closing in. He abruptly quit his job in New Jersey, sold both his cars, and began moving frequently across the country. In California, John met and quickly married his third wife, Diane, in September 1998. Diane's daughter Summer thought John was really nice at first, but Diane soon noticed John telling her little fibs that grew into blatant lies. In May 1999, FBI agents approached Diane and told her about John's previous wives who had gone missing. They advised her to do your own homework on her husband's past. Taking this seriously, Diane reached out to Sherry Davis, Fran's sister. Together, Diane and Sherry went through a storage unit John rented. There, they found information showing John had lived for a time in Indiana, near where the lady in the box body had been found back in 1980. As multiple law enforcement agencies built their case, they made a breakthrough in early 2000. They exhumed the remains of the lady in the box from Indiana and were able to identify her through forensic testing as Janice Hartman, John's long-missing first wife. With this new evidence, police arrested John Smith in October 2000 in Escondido, California. He was charged with the murder of Janice Hartman, as John awaited trial in Ohio for Janice's murder. Investigators continued building their case about Fran's disappearance as well. They discovered John had been living a double life while married to Fran. Remember those weekend trips to Connecticut John claimed were to visit a house where his sister lived? It turns out there was no sister. The woman living in the Connecticut house was actually a prostitute named Janice Miller. John had been engaged to her before suddenly moving to Florida and marrying Fran. In August 1991, just 2 months before she vanished, Fran had learned about the woman in Connecticut. She told John she wanted to go there and meet this woman. This may have been what triggered John to get rid of Fran before his deceptions were fully exposed. John Smith's trial for the murder of Janice Hartman began in July 2001 in Wayne County, Ohio. The star witness was John's brother Michael, who finally revealed the secret he had kept for over 25 years about finding Janice's dismembered body in the box John had built. John's defense team tried to create doubt by suggesting Janice may have been killed by drug dealers because of her work as a police informant. They pointed to an incident just days before she vanished, when Janice reported being assaulted and possibly gang raped by 5 men who called her a narc. But the jury didn't buy it. On July 27, 2001, they found John Smith guilty of murdering Janice Hartman. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. But Fran's daughter Dee Dee and sister Sherry continued pushing for answers. In 2002, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit against John Smith for Fran's death. The court found him liable and ordered him to pay $1 million to Fran's family. But the family knew they were unlikely to ever see that money. Years passed. John Smith sat in prison in Ohio, continuing to maintain his innocence in both cases. His first parole hearing in 2011 was denied. Fran's family stayed vigilant, determined to keep pressure on authorities to solve her case. Their persistence paid off in November 2019, when prosecutors in New Jersey finally indicted John Smith for Fran's murder. Even from his prison cell in Ohio, it seemed John Smith might face justice for his second wife's death as well. But the case hit some snags. In 2021, a judge ruled that prosecutors couldn't use John's conviction for killing Janice as evidence of motive in Fran's case. This made proving the charges more difficult. Then in 2023, prosecutors made a surprising decision. They offered John Smith a deal. If he admitted to killing Fran and revealed where he put her body, they would drop the murder charges. The deal didn't require a full confession or any corroborating evidence. John took the deal. He told investigators he had wrapped Fran's body in a blanket and left it in a dumpster at the factory where he worked in New Jersey, without remains to recover or more details to verify. It was an unsatisfying resolution for Fran's family, but it was some closure after decades of uncertainty. Today, John Smith remains in prison in Ohio for Janice's murder. He will be eligible for parole again in 2029. When he'll be in his late 70s. Fran's family continues to honor her memory and advocate for victims of DV. The FBI is still trying to identify two women pictured in photographs found when they arrested John in 2000. Given his history, investigators worry these unknown women may also have been victims. John Smith's case highlights how someone can hide dark secrets behind a pleasant facade. To many, he seemed like a normal, even charming man, but those who knew him best saw glimpses of his volatile temper and dishonest nature.